Good morning. Welcome to Shields and Arrows on this Monday. Tuesday, actually. Yesterday was Memorial Day, and we took the day off in observance of it. And I hope that you took some time to reflect on the great blessings of our nation and the price paid for it. Now, with that, we have a number of things to talk about today. We're going to be talking about Phil Robertson and his passing away at the age of 79 and look back on his legacy a little bit. And I think it is worth discussing. Also, I realized I don't have my microphone on, so give me just one moment. There we go. I apologize. Such an amateur program today. Actually, I forgot I didn't have everything set up because I'm still using all of this for both Sunday school as well as the Daily Show. And sometimes I forget on the first episode of the week that I don't have it set up, and I've got to hurry up and scramble and last minute hook the camera up and all the wiring and the lighting and the microphone, and I forgot. So I hope that you can forgive me. Now we are off and rolling. Everything should be working now. And so with all that, like I said, we're going to be talking about Phil Robertson today to some degree, his legacy, and I think a lot of good that he has done, as well as his family. Also, we are going to be talking a little bit here in a moment about Russia and Ukraine, and things seem to be heating up a little bit. What is that all about? Are we heading towards World War III? I don't know. And then we're going to look at an article from the Gospel Coalition at the very end to talk about how determinism is alive and well within Christianity. And trying to answer the question why. Why is it so popular? Why do people feel the need to hold to a determinist view? So a little bit interesting discussion on matters of theology there. Now, before we do that, though, I want to remind you whether you want to go to the Mark Baze Ministries website or if you want to go to the YouTube channel, either way. By the way, make sure that you're subscribed still. We've lost like nearly, over 100 subscribers. Maybe some people are just unsubscribing themselves, but also YouTube has been a little bit tricky before, and they have unsubscribed people. But yesterday, of course, or Sunday, I should say, we had two different live streams. We had the Second Coming Part 2 for our Sunday School lesson, session number 37. I hope that you take the time to look at that as we looked at Revelation chapter 19 and the second coming of Christ, and so many Old Testament prophecies that were fulfilled in that. And then we had a sermon on doctrine and practice talking about serving and opportunity for good works. You know, that sermon's not the most heavy on exegetical analysis, but the truth is I think it's very practical, and that's kind of the theme of the sermon, trying to talk about how to be able to do good works and serve in this day and age, some of the obstacles that are in front of us in our efforts to try to do good works. And so hopefully you found that worthwhile. After all, I am a pastor. I'm not just an online minister. And so I've got to speak to matters that affect my specific congregation, but hopefully at the same time you found it of value worthwhile as well. Okay, now, with all of that, I do want to share with you, once again, some quite sad news here. This is the Daily Wire's announcement on it, but you can find it all over all the news. Right here. The Duck Dynasty patriarch and devout Christian Phil Robertson dies at 79. Many of you at this point have heard of the Robertson family. You may know them better as Duck Dynasty. If you are, really a hunter, you know them as Duck Commander, Buck Commander. And he passed away, I believe it was just yesterday. Perhaps it was 2 days ago. But it very, very recent. I was trying to see the exact date. But it may have been on Memorial Day. It could have been on Sunday. The article from the Daily Wire says, Phil Robertson, whose company and family became the center of the popular A&E television series Duck Dynasty, died just months after receiving an Alzheimer's diagnosis, his family said on Sunday. Robertson was 79, so I think he passed away on Sunday. And we saw that, a few months ago when they announced that he does have Alzheimer's, and it was a very severe and aggressive form of Alzheimer's, and he went very, very quickly. In a social media post, the Robertson family said their father, husband, and grandfather, Phil Robertson, is now with the Lord. An avid outdoorsman, Robertson invented his first duck call in 1972. Once again, kind of a true American, success story. If you, my dad's read a lot of stuff about Phil, and I've read some degree of it. He wasn't somebody who just came from, all the wealth in the world. He just grew up in Louisiana, played football, famously, started over Terry Bradshaw, I believe, and, in college, and, and started his own duck call business, and it really took off well. So let me say a few things. As I think about the legacy, the history of Phil Robertson, here's the Duck Dynasty official post here. We are saddened to hear the passing of Phil Robertson, a hunting industry pioneer and the patriarch of the beloved Robertson family. Our thoughts are with them during this difficult time. We extend our deepest condolences and respect their privacy as they grieve. Now, let me try to put all of this together. I have a great appreciation for the Duck Dynasty family and the show the Robertson family, the Duck Dynasty show. Now, I know that I engage with a group of people who are exceptional Bible students, very good theologians, very sound in doctrine, and you have a steel backbone when it comes to Bible doctrine. And there will be some people in our camp even who may be a little bit critical of maybe a post here or there that not just the Duck Dynasty people, the Robertson family share on social media or whatever, but just, Christianity in general, because unfortunately a lot of people try to pull verses and passages of Scripture that weren't written to us and try to, make them about us, and that's just the common practice. And I understand the reason for defending, hey, no, those are not about us. We've got to rightly divide. We need not use passages in the Bible that were written to Israel or a different time or a improper interpretation of the passage. I get it. But for a moment, let me make my case to you why the influence of the Robertson family and Duck Dynasty has been very good. And this is all built off of the back of Phil. If you read the story of the Robertson family, Phil was no Bible-thumping, church-going Christian in his younger days. He was quite a rough guy, okay? And he'll admit it as much. You can read his biography, you can read the son's biographies. Even when the kids were born, I think, for some time, Phil was not the man you know of him today. And it was through a lot of long-suffering with his wife and others, and eventually Phil turned things around. I think he even says that, he was saved, believed the gospel, came to faith, all those different things, and really turned a 180 in his life. And so with that, the family's strong faith, Christian faith, was really founded upon the patriarch, Phil. I mean, he was the head of the family. And let me say, that alone was something worthy of respect. That in this modern time, progressive era, when you watched the show Duck Dynasty, and you saw anything regarding the Robertson family, Phil very much was the head of that family. I mean, you could just see it. The sons respected him. He Nobody ever undermined him. Nobody ever shamed him. He was the leader, the head of his family. That alone in these modern times is something worth of note. It reestablished the idea that the father, the grandfather, the patriarch is someone who should be receiving respect that is due him from his children, from his wife, from his grandkids, you name it. And when you look at the impact that the Duck Dynasty show had, it's funny. I remember my dad when it first came out. I never watched it, but my dad saw some of it, and he thought it was a little bit silly at first. The whole idea of these brothers and whatnot. They're driving their trucks off into ditches and whatnot, off-roading to prove how redneck they are, and the silly Louisiana accents, and I guess it's pretty genuine. That seems to be how they talk for the most part. Kind of amusing, kind of silly, but eventually it grows on you. But the big thing is how every episode they ended in a word of prayer, and that's what they did. They ended with prayer. I think Phil usually was the one that led the prayer. And seeing something like that on mainstream television, a conservative family, that they never, as far as I know, there was never bleeping out of bad words. As far as I know, now somebody may say, no, I remember this episode or whatever, but they were never having to edit out foul language. It was just good, wholesome, silly reality TV, right? How much of it was scripted, I don't know. Some of it probably was scripted a little bit. But it was just a wholesome show, and it was a family that was openly Christian, and they were in the mainstream. I mean, you could not get bigger than Duck Dynasty. They signed this massive deal with Walmart, and you saw the Duck Commander stuff everywhere. Bass Pro Shops, doesn't matter. For a openly Christian and conservative family, they were conservatives. They were hunting. They were always shooting guns. They were always doing stuff. It was a good thing. Another thing about it was it challenged the whole TV Hollywood mentality of, those are just a bunch of dumb Southern hillbilly rednecks. The idea of the country boy is, those bunch of, simple-minded dummies. Just watch any Hollywood movie and, they're always... TV shows, you name it, they're always poking fun, making fun of, people from the country, people from the South, hunters, you name it. We're always the villains, we're always the idiots, we're always the butt of the joke, right? And so, to see a show that, it may have started out, hey, look at them, look how funny they are, look at how crazy they are, but it really transformed to... these are they're normal people. They have family squabbles and stuff just like anybody else. But especially somebody like Phil was somebody of wisdom, somebody to be respected. And I think it gave a sense of honor, a sense of dignity to the country boy in a lot of ways, which is a very good thing, because the truth is masculinity is getting harder and harder to come by. And you're just not finding a lot of masculinity in the suburbs, all right? No offense to all of our suburb dwellers, okay? If you are a masculine man in the suburbs, then you are a diamond in the rough. Is that a good way to find it? I don't know. Maybe it's you're pretty rare, okay? Most masculinity is primarily found still out in the country, because country boy can survive. And so I think it was a good thing. The fact that Phil was very outspoken outside of the show to speak about faith, to speak about Christianity, and then of course he got more openly political as time went on. He was a supporter of Trump, and the Republican Party, spoke at some Republican events and all of these things. And the sons kind of lean into it too. Willie more than others. Jace always kind of seems to be the one that's a little bit more private. I'm just going to say, I think that Phil's legacy is one of a net positive. It has been a good thing for American culture, American society. And I would remind all of you who are watching with us today, who do understand that the Duck Dynasty crew are more standard evangelical in their position. They're probably, trying to build the kingdom. I know Sadie Robertson has done, Willie's daughter, the granddaughter of Phil. She's done a lot of speaking and borderline preaching to some degree. I understand your qualms, and I wouldn't want, I wouldn't want Willie to come teach my Sunday school class, okay? I wouldn't want him to do that, because we probably wouldn't agree on a number of things. But for people to openly acknowledge that Jesus Christ, the Son of God, to openly acknowledge Christian faith and the Bible, and praying over dinner, that's a good thing. And so I think every single one of us should give Phil Robertson some respect. Give Phil Robertson some due credit. And because I think he has done more to at least promote simple Christianity in American culture than any of us. And that alone is worth acknowledging. And it is just a good thing for Christian values, Christian families to be promoted. It is a net positive. Even if it's not perfect theology, if it's not perfect doctrine, the mere fact that a biblical family to a degree is being presented in a very public way, in a very positive way, it is a good thing. And I would say up to this point, we don't know how everything's going to turn out, but at this time, there's been no scandals surrounding Phil, surrounding his sons, surrounding their wives, as far as I know. Now maybe there's some scandal that you've heard about or you've heard gossip about, but I certainly haven't. And so with that, I would recommend look back on Phil Robertson as a man who did a lot of good for just simple American society, okay? And presenting some good Christian virtue, Christian values. So let's have some grace and appreciation for others. So thank you to Phil Robertson, and I hope that I saw some comments there. Toby notes Phil liked to water baptize and may have been a Church of Christ type of John the Baptist. Maybe so, but I hope that. Hopefully it was by faith alone, and he wasn't counting on anything extra to getting there. And we may be able to dig up enough things that when Phil speaks about matters of salvation, and if somebody can find it for me and link it to me, please let me know. But I have hopes that that Phil Robertson family are coming to the Lord by faith, not trusting in their works or baptism or any of those things to get them right with God. And that we'll get to enjoy eternity with them. So, moving on, let's go ahead and talk about a little bit of a concerning thing here. I'll go back to the Daily Wire for this because they'll have an article on it. Things are getting a little bit more dicey, a little bit more intense overseas. Putin has greatly increased his attacks and the pressure that he is putting on Ukraine. And it looks like Putin it really is leaning into it. I don't know if Putin has smelled the blood in the water. I don't know if Putin thinks that he has an upper hand right now. Maybe Putin does have an advantage at this current time. But he did increase some pretty heavy attacks on Ukraine, Kyiv even specifically. I don't know if he's going to attempt another heavy assault to potentially take the entire state of Ukraine. But I would say it is, what's what I'm looking for? It is smart, it is responsible to not assume nothing bad can happen. All right? And I think that the matter, I think, probably does need to be resolved in a quick and orderly fashion. If we are determined, if we are resolved to help Ukraine, then I would say something's getting to the point where we're going to have to do something. I'm not saying send American troops. That's the last thing I'm saying. But get very, very strict on Russia. Europe is going to have to stop buying Russian oil. I don't know how much oil Russia is selling to Europe right now. But I would say keep your eye on it, because it really is seeming to be just an ongoing problem that you never know when does that first missile somehow accidentally land in Poland? When is the first missile that Ukraine sends that reaches a little bit too close to Moscow? And the next thing you know, you've got a much bigger problem on your hands. So we'll be tracking it. World wars have kicked off for lesser things. We'll just put it that way. So I just felt like it's worth, we talk about current things. And one of the amazing things is that I hope that this doesn't happen. If this war continues to escalate in Russia and Ukraine, and it really begins to look like a greater threat on Europe, and it will affect the United States too, but maybe Europe is closer to it. What will that do to Europe? Will we see Europe turn more towards Christianity? There's already been a little bit of push lately by some, like in Britain, for example. We keep talking about, is it too little, too late? I don't know. Does Europe still have enough of a Christian foundation for them to reject so much of the secular modernist mentality? And by this point, have they already imported too many foreign people that they've lost really all sense of their identity? So by no means do I think that war would be, ends do not justify the means. I do not want a war to break out to bring Europe to Christianity. What I am saying is, if this war does expand, what kind of shift will we see in Europe? And then as a byproduct of it, we may see a shift in the United States. We certainly have had it pretty easy for quite some time. So keep an eye on all that, see how we're going to handle it. Once again, I think that the blame, so much of it does have to go to Joe Biden for looking so weak. Because when Biden gave up Afghanistan to the Taliban, Putin realized he could just do whatever he wanted. And so Trump is now trying to clean up Biden's mess, and it's proving to be a challenging mess to handle. All right. Now, let's go ahead and look at an article here from the Gospel Coalition. Ever so often they have an article that I just have to talk about. And here is the title of this article. When the pastorate wasn't God's plan, trusting the Lord in shifting circumstances. All right, so here is this article here. I don't know how much we're going to get into like the specific unique story that's going to be told here. A guy who thought he was called to be a pastor and then, well, maybe he's not. But what I want you to see is the initial part of this article especially, because what it does is it exposes the assumptions that are being made. The assumptions. Essentially what I mean is the baseline doctrinal position, okay? So this is written by the Gospel Coalition. We proclaim our belief that God works all things for our good and His glory. Now that's Romans 8:28 there, very famous passage. I'm going to go ahead and read that to you. Romans 8:28. says, "And we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are called according to His purpose." Now, the Gospel Coalition is a more Calvinist-leaning organization, and the Calvinists, of course, love the end of Romans 8. They love Romans 9. And they use Romans 8:28 as the basis to say every single thing works for our good. Okay? Works for our good. And it's for those who are called according to His purpose. Now, I would be so bold as to say, at some point we know that Romans transitions and begins to talk about Israel, and almost everybody puts it at Romans 9, like Romans 9:1. Now, the Calvinists are still so confused, and they'll get it wrong. But most people who have the ability to just read the Bible instead of inserting all their own biases and assumptions into it can read Romans chapter 9, verse 1 and realize, hey, Paul's starting to talk about Israel. My proposition to you is I think Paul starts talking about Israel before Romans 9. Because the truth is, the Bible wasn't written in chapter form. It was written as it was, and then we've added chapters and verses as an indexing, as a reference tool, as a citing tool. I think when you're in Romans 8, even by especially time you get to Romans 8:28, this verse is addressing matters concerning the nation of Israel, I think. Who are the ones called according to His purpose? Who are the ones that God foreknew? Who are the ones that God predestined? I think a strong case to be made is by the time you get to Romans 8:28, you're already talking about Israel, and that blows the minds of some Calvinists, and maybe even some other people. There's some right dividers who would disagree with me on that take. But with that being said, they're taking that verse, they're operating under the baseline assumption here that Romans 8:28 is specifically about us, and the idea of all things in that verse being every single minute thing that takes place in your life. The truth is, the word all is a word that requires context. That just is. Like, even in our natural language as we communicate, all only applies to a specific context. Now, you can have a context that includes all. All men need to believe the gospel to be saved. I mean, that does apply to all men, plain and simple, right? However, you will see times in which, for example, the all Israel will be saved. Is that every single descendant of Abraham? Well, no. You can read Romans 9 how not all who are of Israel are Israel. It's only the remnant. All who are the faithful Israel will be saved. So I would encourage us to say, before we jump over here and say all things means I had a grilled cheese sandwich yesterday, which I didn't, but that sounds really good. And that was God's plan. Consider context. Consider context. Now, as we go back over here to this article here, let's read a little bit more. We affirm that the Lord will fulfill His purpose for us. Now look what they do. Psalms 138:8. Psalm 138:8. So now we're not just in Romans, but we're in Psalm 138. Let's just read a little bit of Psalm 138 and see if we can't get a little bit of context here. A psalm of David. I wonder who this psalm's about. Could be David. I will praise Thee with my whole heart. Before the gods I will sing praise unto Thee. That's an interesting one, before the gods there. Could that be referring to Israel? Possibly. Ye shall be as gods. Well, that's quoting Satan. Ye are gods. Ye are gods is the verse that said back in, I can't remember which passage. Regardless, we could dig into the context there. Obviously not the one true God. I will worship toward Thy holy temple, and praise Thy name for Thy loving kindness and for Thy truth, for Thou hast magnified Thy word above all Thy name. In the day when I cried, thou answeredest me, and strengthenest me with strength in my soul. All the kings of the earth shall praise thee, O Lord, when they hear the words of thy mouth. Yea, they shall sing in the ways of the Lord, for great is the glory of the Lord. Though the Lord be high, yet hath he respect unto the lowly, but the proud he knoweth afar off. Though I walk in the midst of trouble, thou wilt revive me. Thou shalt stretch forth thine hand against the wrath of mine enemies, and thy right hand shall save me. A lot of tribulation type words there. That's lost on Calvinists because they can't comprehend that. The Lord will perfect that which concerneth me. Thy mercy, O Lord, endureth forever. Forsake not the works of thine own hands. The Lord will perfect that which concerneth me. Reads very different than what he's citing here, Psalm 138:8, is that the Lord will fulfill his purpose for us. The Lord will perfect that which concerneth me. Notice how verse 8 is so specific. Talking about David directly, but then maybe we could expand that beyond, possibly even to all of Israel as a whole in the times of tribulation. And yet over here in the Gospel Coalition, hey, look at how broad this is, right? The Lord will fulfill his purpose for us. One of the things that I don't appreciate about the Gospel Coalition or the Calvinist position at large is the vague citation of verses. They cite the verses and they kind of change it just a little bit to make it fit. And then that's often what they do. So I don't appreciate that. If we go back to this article here, and that he's mapped out every detail of our lives. So Psalm 139:16. Let's see what Psalm 139:16 says. Thine eyes did see my substance, and yet being unperfect, in thy book all my members were written, which in continuance were fashioned, when as yet there was none of them. Thine eyes did see my substance, yet being unperfect, and in thy book all my members were written. And which in continuance were fashioned, when yet there was none of them. Seems to be talking uniquely about David writing here. The Gospel Coalition, their statement is he's mapped out every detail of our lives. Is that what really Psalm 139:16 is saying there? Or does it have a more specific meaning than that? Notice just how broadly this is made. I just don't think that this passes the test for a serious biblical exegetical matter. Now, this guy who's writing this article is not doing biblical exegesis here. He's writing an article about his own personal experience and how, God's going to work and use him through that. Do a better job. If you're going to write your articles, you would do well not to vaguely just reference verses to make your case. But look at the assumptions. These are the assumptions that are made. God works all things for our good and his glory. We affirm that the Lord will fulfill his purpose for us, and he's mapped out every detail of our lives. So this leads us to the conclusion, reading this, that every single minute detail of our lives is working for our good, whether we would perceive it to be good or bad, right? You get the job, you lose the job. You be healthy, you get sick. You have success, you have tragedy. And then we affirm that the Lord will fulfill his purpose for us. So God has a specific purpose for you. And that is not just in the broad sense of God's purpose for us is that we believe the gospel and do good works. Okay? It is, God has called you to do this and you to do that. All right? Very specific details. He's mapped out every detail of our lives. So this leads us to two different types of thought. There are, really there's determinism, that God has determined everything that's going to happen. God has determined everything that is going to happen, and that includes everything good and bad. That really is the Calvinist view taken out to its most direct conclusion. That's the result. All of a sudden, God becomes responsible for a lot of things, doesn't he? Now, the Calvinists will try to argue, no, man created those problems, but God's the one that mapped it out. So, I don't know, think about something terrible that happens to people's lives. You lose a loved one. You get sick. Your, best friend betrays you. Fill in all those things. God chose for all those things to happen. God mapped out all the details for those things to happen. So God can fulfill His purpose, because all things work to our good. We don't know how that this great tragedy, let's just a child dying young. I don't know how that's going to work to God's glory and God's good or in our good, but we're just going to trust that it will. That is the baseline assumption and theology that Calvinism has, that Calvinism presents. And so the reason why these things happen is because that's what God wanted. It's God's will. He willed it to take place. And that includes people dying and going to hell. That's just baked into Calvinism, right? That person, God willed it that they would not be saved, so that person goes to hell. And so he starts off with his baseline assumptions there and goes on, begins to explain in the article. So when hardship comes, why do we struggle? Why do we drown in our confusion? Why does it feel as though the joy within us has been drained day after day? Why do we wrestle with anger, sadness, and wavering confidence in the truth that the Lord was already at work long before we became aware of our troubles? And he tells his personal story. In 2019, my wife and I were certain of God's call for me to serve as a pastor. Our family, friends, pastors, and local church all affirmed this calling. In faith, we uprooted our lives in Wisconsin and moved 12 hours away to Kansas City so I could attend seminary. That was your first mistake. As a student of seminary, that was your first mistake, going to seminary, because all it did was just probably mess you up even more. We sacrificed time, energy, and stability to pursue God's call. And as the years went by, more voices affirmed that what was originally recognized by those back home. After graduation, we took another step of faith. I accepted a pastoral position in Kentucky, hundreds of miles removed from the comfort of our Wisconsin roots. It wasn't long before that church felt like home. We were blessed with a congregation that loved us deeply, a pastoral team that offered unwavering encouragement, and dear friends so supportive I could scarcely imagine stepping away. Their affirmation, their kindness, and even the church's act of ordaining me to the ministry solidified what we knew in our hearts. God had called me to serve as a pastor. Then, unexpectedly, the Lord led us in a different direction. Due to my wife's health challenges beyond our control, I had to step away from pastoral ministry. It was devastating, not just for us, but for our church family as well. Despite every effort, the circumstances proved insurmountable. So we left the church we cherished, the heartbreak, the confusion. It was profound, especially for my wife. Where can we turn when circumstances bring such a dramatic change? You have to feel for him. Really took quite great lengths to go into the ministry, to be a pastor of a church, and then due to whatever reasons for his wife's health, I don't know if they had to go somewhere where she could receive extra care, be closer to a certain hospital. I don't know exactly, and it doesn't say, right? So we can't say for certain. But regardless, whatever the circumstances, they felt that they were not able to continue in this position here at this church. But he was certain that God had called him to the pastoral position there. Let's just go ahead and work through this. Truths that hold me fast. I don't have all the answers. The questions I posed above are the ones I still wrestle with. I don't have full clarity, nor do I completely understand what God is doing in my life. If I'm honest, I'm writing this not for you, but for myself. Maybe he watches this and he can hear my take on the matter. Yet amid the raw emotions and unclear circumstances, I am returning to truths I know about God. 3 in particular have carried me through this season. If you're in a time of uncertainty, I pray they encourage you too. Number 1, darkness is part of the journey. The days of darkness will be many. Ecclesiastes 11:8. Jason DeRucci once said, glimpses of God's goodness in this age are God's gift to us, gifts to help us endure. For they remind us of His worth and beauty and give us confidence that He will deliver again. The book of Ecclesiastes is interesting. There is some universal truths in the book of Ecclesiastes. I think Dr. White even is doing a study on Ecclesiastes right now. And there's some things that you can take for all time. Even in the dark, God's goodness shines. Even as darkness stretches before us, we can remember that light is sweet. Ecclesiastes 11:7. God assures us that He has revealed and will continue to reveal His faithfulness. For those in Christ, darkness never has the final word. Instead, God uses trials to ground our joy in Him. You're doing a lot there with those passages, but point 3, God is already at work. John Piper writes, so obviously this guy is Calvinist, as soon as we discover we have a problem, God has already been working on it and the solution is on the way. We hold to this truth, not merely because we've seen His kindness in our lives, but because of what He has accomplished on the cross. Though I don't know God's immediate plan for us, I know this, we don't grieve without hope. 1 Thessalonians 4:13. Because of Christ's victory, darkness will dissipate, God will carry us into a new day. There is some truth to that. I mean, 1 Thessalonians 4:13, I think is good. What new day are you talking about? Are you talking about just the hope of salvation? I think that's what really matters. And that's just kind of the conclusion of his article there. Let me now just reflect on Let me reflect on the reason for why Christians like determinism. So, first of all, we naturally desire for God to be in control of everything, okay? And for some Christians, they would say, of course God's in control of everything. And what do we mean by that, right? What do words mean? Is God in control right now? Is God in control in the sense that the earth is continuing, we continue to exist, no one can thwart God's plans, God plans to save whosoever believes the gospel, give them eternal life, God plans for one day for this age to come to an end and to usher in the prophetic age, which will lead to the tribulation and the kingdom to come. Is God in control? Yes. Yes. There's nothing we can do to thwart God's plans. But this comes to the point at which Christians naturally want God to be in control of everything. It's God's plan as to why I lost my job. It's God's plan as to why my marriage is falling apart. I don't know, any example that you could think of, right? It's all God's doing. And that is it gives you comfort because you think, oh, God's got it all planned out. This is all a part of the plan. This was supposed to happen. It is a coping mechanism for hard times, okay? It's a coping mechanism for hard times. And also, it's just a way for you to... Some people would maybe abuse it. I don't think every Christian does it. But some would use it to get around responsibility. I think the whole idea of a pastor being called to a church is incorrect. And I think it's been used and abused. I want to leave a church. I'm not saying I want to leave a church. I love my church. They're going to have to kick me out. But, you know, the pastor says, I want to leave my church. How do I do it in a way that I won't get a bunch of pushback? God called me. God called me to another church. It's a bigger church, better salary, nicer parsonage if they even do that anymore. God called me. It's a way to get out of it. And you can, non-pastors can do it. Boys have manipulated girls. God told me we're supposed to be together. That's happened before. Girl says, well, God told me we shouldn't be together. and around and around it goes. But it's been used and abused. I mean, I've heard justification as well. I remember when I was a younger guy working in the summer times with other younger guys. Younger guy said, well, I'm, doing things with my girlfriend that should only be reserved for married people, which wasn't the language he used, but that's what he was communicating. Said, if a child comes about from it, I guess it was all a part of God's plan. And even back then, when I wasn't a right divider, I still had enough wherewithal to say it's not God's plan for you to be doing things with your girlfriend that are only reserved for married couples, right? You can use it as a justification, all right? The truth is, people use it to get around responsibility, not having to own their actions, not having to own their mistakes or their choices, because they can just chalk it up to God. It's all God's plan. God ordained it. This is what's going to happen. It's also a coping mechanism. Kind of going back to what I said at the beginning, it makes people feel better. If you're falling on hard times, it can help you in the moment to say, well, God's planning this. He's working it all out. This is exactly what He wanted. I didn't get this because God has something better in store, right? You ever seen the cartoon of the little kid and the teddy bear? The little girl's holding a small teddy bear, and then there's Jesus holding the larger teddy bear behind his back, and the little girl's like, but I love my little teddy bear, Jesus. And, Jesus has something better in store. That's kind of the idea there. It's a coping mechanism that, hey, I'm going through this hard time now, but God's doing it because He has something even better beyond the horizon. There is something true to that. We're going through this life in a world that's fallen, but what's better for us is eternal life. It's salvation by grace through faith. That's the great hope that we look towards. It's not like, I lost my job now because God's going to reward me with something much better. I lost my girlfriend, my fiance, whatever, because, hey, there's somebody better looking that God's got in store for me. Now, the final reason, and these are kind of all connected. So we want God to be in complete control of everything that happens in our life. So we can take comfort. God's going to work it all out. God's got better plans for me. For some people, it alleviates responsibility. They can, say, hey, it was all God's doing. And then when we start with those basic premises, then we go on a hunt, all right? We're hunting wabbits. And what we're hunting for are verses to affirm what we want to be true. We hunt for verses that affirm what we want to be true. And so what do? We go to Psalms. We go to Psalms 138. We go to Psalms 139. We find verses that we can use to build the case that we want to be true. We go to Romans 8:28. I would argue there's a very strong case to be made. The entire point of Romans, folks, is to explain what in the world God's going to do with Israel and what in the world God is doing right now. Because the kingdom hasn't come and Israel's in unbelief. What's the answer? Paul is simply giving the answer to what's going to happen with Israel. And I think when we read all things there, be careful to just read, hey, you stumped your toe, you went to McDonald's, and you had to go to the dentist. And everything's working for your good. Every bit of it. By the way, it's so ugly, because what we're saying is, I don't know, however many babies are aborted every single day, all for the glory of God. All because it's all working to our good. It is necessary that those babies die in the womb, because that's what God willed. That's a very ugly view of God. I don't think God wills for any one of those babies to die. Not a single one. Now, if you read Romans, Paul is explaining what is going on. I think what Paul is saying here in Romans 8:28 is, listen, we know that all things work together for good to them that love God. So whether it is the kingdom program that was rejected by Israel or the grace message, all things that God operates and does will work for the good to them that love God and to them who are called according to His purpose. I think that's reference to Israel. Hey, Israel, the nation on the whole, yeah, the nation of Israel is in rejection. But you as individuals, those of you, individual Jews called by God, you can still come to Him. There's a pathway, and many of them did. Whether it was Paul, whether it was Barnabas, or whether it was any number of them, right? You have a pathway forward. You can still receive a blessing from God. God is still offering something to you. All things will work to our good. But because we want so bad this determinist idea of God, we make those verses say something very specific to us that I don't think is actually what it's saying. So just understand the determinist idea, fatalist almost idea of Christianity. It is an emotional view. It is a coping view, and it hunts for verses to affirm it. Now, for everyone who has an amazing story in their life, a story that you can't explain, that you would consider to be miraculous, unexplainable in any other way, and we all know people that have them, God can do what He wants. He is sovereign. If He wishes to do something miraculous, if He wishes to intervene in some way, He can. But that is a much more conservative and biblically defensible view, to say that God can if He wants. And if you believe you have an example, then you can share it. But to say that He has absolutely, is required, and will no matter what, that is not near as defensible. So I'm giving you a little bit to work with there to say that God, He could. We know He has in the past. We know He can in the future. But I would say own your decisions. All right? Good or bad. Now don't be arrogant. If you make a good decision, praise the Lord and thank the Lord for your parents who raised you well. But our decisions are our own. And sometimes the bad things that happen to us are the result of our bad decisions. And you know what? Also, sometimes they're the result of it's just the way it happens. It's how it goes. I can spend my life savings on a herd of cattle, and we could have a lot of good rain, and cattle market could do great, and I could make some money. They could also get sick, struck by lightning, or the cattle market crashes. Did God do that specifically to me, or is the world going to turn until Christ returns? I know which one is more easily defendable from Scripture, and I know which one doesn't attribute all the evil things in the world happening because it was God's will preordaining it. That's the way I'm going to go with all that. Hey, it is Tuesday, but it's operating as a Monday. I want to say hi to everybody and look at some of your comments. Mary, thank you again so much for what you did for our Bible conference. Really appreciate you. Thank you for doing that with the door prizes. I don't know if you want to praise for it, but I'm going to go ahead and just call you out. Thank you. You didn't toot your own horn. You reached out to me, so thank you for that. I just thought about that just yesterday. Paul, great to have you. Toby, always appreciate you. Ken's with us today in Orlando at Epic Universal Studios. Halfway through a 95-minute wait for Mario Kart. Hey, it better be worth it if you're waiting 95 minutes. Mom's with us today. Great to have you, Mom. I'm sure Dad's there with you. Kristen, good morning. Yeah, mic check, I know. I messed up. Toby says the Duck Dynasty show was funny when it started. Yeah, I mean, those early seasons were funny, and they were all pretty good. Maybe earlier or later on, they kind of seemed a little bit more scripted, maybe. I don't know. But they were all still good. It was funny to me when you finally saw the other brother, the one that's clean-shaven and is a preacher. That's pretty funny. The News Unit Network. News Unit, are you with us still? Who is Mark Baze? I'm him. That's Mark Baze is me. I'm a preacher. You can contact me at markbazeministries.org if you have any questions, but good to have you with us. Phil was an NIV 84 Bible believer. Maybe so. I don't really know. It's possible. A lot of people use the NIV. He told you, so you knew him personally. That's interesting. Toby says, Phil, yeah, I already read that one. Kitty is in the house with us today. Great to have you, Kitty. Mom says, I never heard Phil teach that salvation was by anything more than trusting Jesus, what Jesus did for us, us on the cross and his resurrection. Yeah, I don't ever remember if they went to a non-denominational church or what they went to. Yeah, I mean, from what I remember Phil talking, I don't know that he was probably a good, kind of more standard evangelical, which I think a standard evangelical who doesn't require water baptism is trusting in the work of Christ for salvation. Are they confused? Yes. Do we need to help get them straightened out? Yes, we do. At the same time, have a little optimism, have a little grace, and just help support Mark Baze Ministries so I can win the battle for sound doctrine and show them why they're confused in some areas. So 2 things can be true at once, people, all right? Have a little love, a little patience. Paul says, random cue for later. Ever heard of Kent Hovind? I can answer that right now. No, I don't know who that is. Paul, you've heard about a lot of people that I haven't. It's almost like you're more experienced than I am. Kent Hovind, American Christian fundamentalist evangelist and convicted tax evader. Well, that's interesting. His Young Earth Creationist ministry focuses on the denial of receipt. Oh, okay, so this is a very... The initial thing you get from DuckDuckGo is pretty harsh on him. I don't know exactly all about him. Really no clue. That's interesting. No idea really about him though. Toby says he appeared to be well studied of the Scripture and hope he understood Paul's epistles are for the body of Christ. I don't know, Toby, if that was a reference to Phil. Or if it was a reference to Phil, reference to Phil or a reference to this Kent Hovind. So I don't know. I'm not sure which one you were referring to there. Good morning, all of y'all. Great to have you. Cliff, pretty sure that's you. Paul says what we call reality was made by God and everything in it because of him. It's that simple. Yeah, I think it's just much more simple that, the Lord created everything. We can give that and give him credit for that. Rick is on with us. Rick, good to have you. When are you going to come see me again? I mean, it's only been a couple months since you've been all the way to Oklahoma. Come on now. Mr. Ken Hamner, haven't watched lately, flooding down here, got a moment of downtime, been listening for a few minutes. Amen, brother. Hey, Ken, always enjoy having you on, Ken Hamner. I always want to say Hammer, but it's Hamner. Paul likes to give me rabbit holes to step in. I can chase some rabbits sometimes. I've caught a rabbit before with my bare hands. My parents witnessed it. I was like 5. So surprised I dropped it. Let's see here. By the way, I think Ask the Theologian is going to be back on today with Dr. Randy White. Let me check and see if on my... Let's see. Yeah, he's scheduled. He's going to go live here at 11 a.m., 10 o'clock Mountain Time. So y'all be sure to go and check him out. Always, we appreciate him. tell him that his better-looking protege sent y'all over there. Always be sure to give him a hard time, okay? That's the best things you could possibly do for me. I think I'm just rambling at this point. Thank you all so much for joining us today. I hope you found today's show worthwhile and of value. We'll be back tomorrow with more. If there's something you want me to talk about, if I feel like I have something to give on it, I'll certainly take the time to respond. In the meantime, you can support my ministry at markbazeministries.org. You make it possible. I work for you. All right? So don't fire me, please. And hopefully we can continue to do some good here. Let's have some long-suffering with our evangelical friends and stand for good, true, sound doctrine. Hopefully we can persuade them. Until next time, this has been Shields and Arrows. See you tomorrow. Thank you so much.